Hey kid, wanna see some magic?
Yeah, I guess. That could be fun.
I'm Weber. Today's your lucky day. You're gonna love this. Take good care of it.
Huh. Dokapon Kingdom. Oh no! Greetings everyone, I'm Prince B, and today we're looking at Dokapon Kingdom, which proudly calls itself the friendship-destroying game. Isn't that just magical? But it can't be that bad, can it? I mean, look, it looks kind of fun. Let's give it a shot. Prologue. Background information. Dokapon Kingdom is a game made by Sting and published by Atlas for the PlayStation 2 in 2007 and was later ported in 2008 for the Wii. It combines elements of a board game styled party game with an RPG of all things. Further, it's actually a remake of a Super Famicom game, Dokapon 321, which released in 1994. For the purpose of this review, we'll be looking at the Wii version, though from what I could find, there aren't any real differences between it and the PlayStation version. With that in mind, let's get started with the actual review. Chapter 1. Story and Characters. It's another peaceful day in the Kingdom of Dokapon, and everyone is working hard to make money. But suddenly, monsters begin attacking the various towns of the kingdom and taking their money, which, in case you haven't realized yet, the people of this game value quite a lot. To save the people of this land and, more importantly, protect his investments, the king calls upon adventurers to save Dokapon Kingdom, which apparently spans the whole globe. Okay? Speaking of which, this map looks strangely familiar. Huh. You know, geography has never been my strong suit, but I'm pretty sure that's just Earth. Like, just slightly smushed together and distorted. Weird. Anyway, the king promises to whoever defeats the monsters and returns with the most money the hand of his daughter Penny and the honor of becoming the next king of Dokapon. Yes, even a girl can win the hand of the fair maiden. The game's just forward-thinking like that, which is actually pretty cool. With that incentive, the players set off to find a way to purge the kingdom of its monster infestation and become as disgustingly rich as possible. In addition to the king and princess, the game also features a colorful cast of mostly greedy characters who you'll interact with at towns, shops, and through random events. These include such characters as Leanne the village girl, who asks your assistance and will reward you for your kindness, or this jerk Weber. He's some kind of super-dimensional being that curses you with horrible items no one would ever want, like nitroglycerin that might explode when you take damage. Weber. If you ask me, Weber's probably the real evil mastermind. He just wants to see the world and your friendships burn. The game can actually be decently funny, and it's clear the game is in on the jokes, not taking itself too seriously. Though I'm not always sure I am. The funniest guy is the king, who I'd say is also the most fleshed out character. The enemies are pretty standard fantasy fare: orcs, fairies, dragons, trolls, and the like, though they don't always look like what they're supposed to represent. Further, a lot of them are just palette swaps, though that's really common in RPGs, so that's not really too much of a complaint. As far as our main villain, minor spoilers, we find out pretty early on that the ones behind the monsters cropping up throughout the world are a demonic overlord and his son, Rico, and Rico Jr.? File that under least intimidating names ever. So Rico Jr. and his father, Rico Sr., I guess, are trying to take over the world because that's what overlords do. Wow, I'm so motivated to go fight these guys. Actually, I kind of am. See, while normally due to his bland ambitions, I couldn't care less what Rico Harbor here is doing. He's not murdering the innocent or trying to steal the power of the gods. he's just taking over the world for the evils. But he's also messing with my money, and that's no good. With that said, I'm still not terribly invested in, well, defending my investments. Given the choice, I'd still rather beat up that jerk Weber, given he's been messing with me directly the whole game, whereas this guy, in typical RPG form, doesn't appear till near the end. The difference here from most games like this is that we normally at least hear about the big villain before the 11th hour, and they usually have some kind of motivation or have done something so heinous we simply can't forgive them. While we hear a little about Overlord Rico from his son early on, it's not much more than a kid whining to daddy, and he's not even that menacing. Given that the only thing this guy can do is crash the stock market, so in terms of motivating me to go out and fight, well, there's still not a whole lot there. Overall, outside of the king, most of the characters aren't really that interesting, and the ones who aren't really explored that much, which is a shame. Some of them, like Weber, are just begging for some backstory. While the story is also kind of disappointing, perhaps the game fares better on presentation. Chapter 2. Graphics and Audio. Graphically, the game uses a rather cute chibi style that looks really nice. I think it works well for a party game. With that said, things can look a little blocky, though since I'm not sure if that's a design choice or not, I won't say it's necessarily a bad thing. Overall, I think it looks really nice, and was actually one of my main incentives for looking at the game in the first place. In terms of sound, the music is just okay. The main overworld theme and the battle theme, which are the ones you'll hear most often, are just your average run-of-the-mill fantasy adventure fare. While the game has some more unique background music, the more interesting tracks you probably won't ever hear that much due to changing screens and players so frequently, which is rather unfortunate. The game also has certain lines voice acted, but not all the dialogue is. The voice acting is kind of silly, though not unenjoyable, at first. Unfortunately, hearing the same voice clips for hours on end gets grating after a while. Also of note, I had some experiences with audio glitches, where occasionally music from one area would play over another simultaneously, and sometimes it just didn't play at all. I'm not sure if this was a problem with my disc, the Wii port of the game, or a universal problem, but I thought I'd mention it. Finally, let's move on to the most important part, the gameplay. Chapter 3. Gameplay. Dokapon Kingdom features 3 modes: Normal, Battle Royale, and Story Mode. Normal is a timed game like a standard party game, and Battle Royale has players race to be the first to accomplish an objective. While those two are shorter and thus more manageable for multiplayer, the main draw to this game over other party games is the story mode, and as the gameplay from story mode transfers to the others, that's the mode we'll be spending our time looking at. When you start, you select how many people and computers will be playing, as well as what controllers each player will use. It's worth noting that players can share a controller, which is kind of cool, but rather inconvenient in terms of progressing through turns quickly. After selecting the control options, you input each character's name and choose a job from Warrior, Mage, and Thief. It's really a class, but whatever. You also select your favorite color, aka which of these few colors have been chosen already. The game doesn't allow for duplicates, which makes sense for organizing things, but can be restrictive in a 4-player game, and when you consider you also input names, color locking seems a bit unnecessary. That's a pretty minor complaint though. On the plus side, with classes and color choices, that means there's character customization. You choose your character's eye style and hair and outfit color, and the class you choose will affect the outfit. Further, you can unlock new hairstyles that can be changed at Dokapon Castle. Okay, it's not a lot, but it's something at least. I mean, is this not the height of fashion? Each class has different traits and abilities, and inventory limits, as well as influencing your stat growth, which is important for battles. While you start out with the 3 basic classes, you can unlock more as you go along by mastering these jobs. And you can change your class at the castle. These jobs range from the standard ones like clerics to the off-the-wall robo-knight. Unfortunately, the better ones are, as you would guess, much more difficult to unlock, to the point that the robo-knight and hero classes aren't even really worth it beyond bragging rights. You don't even get to keep unlocked classes for future playthroughs or the battle modes. It makes sense not to be able to keep them unlocked, as everyone would just choose the most powerful classes to start with in later playthroughs, but it also makes it not really worth it to go out of your way to unlock these special classes. Usually in party games you decide movement with a die, but dice are just a bit too pedestrian for Dokapon Kingdom, which opts for a spinner instead. It does about the same thing, but instead invokes horrible memories of trying to flick these things while playing Candyland. Another difference from other party games is that the random elements of this game are not as random as they appear. The spinner's result area is actually predetermined. While making different choices, such as where you choose to land and what actions you make in battle, can affect the outcomes to an extent, it seems the numbers you can spin in each scenario are determined well in advance, a fact the computer players will take full advantage of, planning moves plenty of turns in advance. This puts a human player at a severe disadvantage. Speaking of which, I'd like to talk about the computer players. More than likely you'll be playing with these guys for at least story mode, due to the game's length and the fact that the game is really frustrating. If you thought Mario Party and Monopoly could make you hate someone, try combining the two. That's Dokapon Kingdom. I tried to play this with my brother and we couldn't last more than 30 minutes without being angry with each other. Maybe if you have a mortal enemy you can convince them to play it with you, and the two of you can stew in anger together. Anyways, back to the computers. The AI usually rolls exactly what it needs. Do they need to roll exactly one to reach something? Chances are that's what they're going to roll. The AI were even smart enough to gang up on me and essentially lock me out of the game for the first 2 chapters. I spent most of the time watching them play, and even when I got to play, I usually only got 2 or so turns before I was killed off again, either by one of them or by an enemy I had no hope of beating because I couldn't stay alive long enough to gain any levels. That's not even taking into account getting messed up by random events like Dr. Exiles plunging me into early debt. Needless to say, the game was near unplayable then, and I had to resort to using the secret class, which we'll discuss in a bit, to bail me out, and even that didn't do a whole lot. Lastly, you must sit through all of the CPU's actions, including watching them go shopping. It gets pretty boring. Honestly, in my opinion, above the easiest difficulty setting, the game is borderline broken with CPUs. Traveling the map, you can go to towns to heal, shops to buy items, weapons and magic, and of course empty spaces where you can either get a random event or engage in a battle. While there are some other spaces, these are the main ones. The battle system is somewhat similar to rock, paper, scissors. Both parties take a turn attacking and defending. When attacking, you select from the options to perform a physical attack, use a spell, strike for massive damage, or use a unique ability based on your class, which usually involves buffing a stat. When defending, you can choose to defend, use a defensive magic, counter, or give up for a penalty. It's essentially a guessing game in which you try and choose the option that maximizes or reduces damage based on whether you're attacking or defending. Defend minimizes damage from attacks, magic counters magic, and counter reverses a strike. In particular, the strike works well early in the game, but later on it becomes more of a liability, as most enemies you'd want to use it on will automatically counter if you use it, essentially reducing your offensive actions by 1 and making things a lot less interesting. While it makes sense for the sake of making battles fast-paced, it doesn't really work well from a tactical standpoint. As the game is a competition, you'll often find yourself messing with other players by fighting them or attacking them with magic from the field, in an attempt to stop them from achieving goals and defeating monsters in towns. Liberating towns earns you money and resources. To the victor go the spoils. Obviously, you want to have the most money, as that puts you in the lead for winning the fair princess's hand. But when you're losing, there isn't a chance time to bail you out. No, nothing so luck-based as that. Instead, we have the final and most powerful class in the game, the Darkling. This class is only available to someone who's been in last place for a while, and is achieved by going to a certain space on the board and trading all money, towns, and equipment to that jerk Weber, who in return will transform you into a Darkling. The Darkling gets powerful stats and equipment, and also receives points each turn which can be saved and spent to inflict horrible things upon your opponent, such as forcing them all to fight you, or placing monsters on all the towns on the map. The change only lasts 2 weeks, and even the Darkling, the most powerful class in the game, isn't able to really put you ahead. It can even things out a bit, but if the opponent is smart, like a computer, it can pretty easily play around it. As a result, even the thing that's supposed to balance the game really doesn't work. Of note, healing is done at a town or Dokapon Castle. That's pretty typical for an RPG, right? Oh, but wait, I can't just go to a town, I have to spin the exact number to land there. See how that's a bit of a problem? While you can stock up on healing items, your inventory will usually be filled with items that augment your movement, so you need to be able to reliably heal outside of battle, but the whole town thing doesn't really work here. If this all sounds a bit much, don't worry, you have a long time to get used to it. The story mode is divided into 8 chapters and took me around 25 hours to complete with 4 players, which is excessively long for a party game. With the basics of gameplay covered, let's move on. Chapter 4: Ideas and Themes. Oddly enough, Dokapon Kingdom of all games actually gives some food for thought, if you can even think through the enormous headache you'll have playing it. The main theme is that the more resources you have, the easier it becomes to dominate the competition. That can't be a commentary on anything. No way. I honestly can't tell if this game is a critique or a celebration of greed. It could go either way, really. Pretty much the game says that money is everything. Overall, that's not necessarily a great lesson to teach. Ugh, let's just wrap this up. Final chapter: Verdict. Dokapon Kingdom is a rather unique game. Making an RPG and a party game seemed to me like a horrible idea, but it actually kind of works here. The plot and characters aren't the most engaging, and while the art style is kind of cute, everything else is rather unremarkable. The fact it does so many things just okay means that there isn't anything exceptional to balance out all the things it does poorly. Unfortunately, the game is too simple for an RPG and too complicated for a party game. Further, while it could be fun with multiple people, it's far too long to play through the bulk of the game realistically with others. Dokapon Kingdom receives a tragic ending. It's not completely a bad game. I mean, it's not the worst thing I've ever played, and a lot of it isn't bad on a technical level. It's just the sheer frustration factor, combined with some rather strange design choices, that makes the game something I just can't in good conscience really recommend to anyone who enjoys experiencing the human emotion of happiness. I mean, look at this. Even the game knows it isn't fun. Well, I can't do it. I can't pass this game off on anyone else. I'm cursed with it for all of eternity. Well, I should be fine, just as long as I don't take any damage. I'll see you all next time. Oops. Hey kid, if you liked this video, like it. And how about hitting that subscribe button? The guy who makes these would probably like that.